Thank you to Dr. Houston for inviting me to speak to you today at our first inaugural Chinese chapel. And to Larry for doing what Dr. Houston couldn't, which is to shame me into talking to you all today. Larry also provided me with my topic today, which is what it's like to live in China as a foreigner. So that's an easy one for me. I did it for 10 years, and I'd like to share a few of my stories and takeaways from that experience. In order to do that, I'd just like to set the scene a little bit, give you a little bit of background so you can understand where I'm coming from. 20 years ago, I was sitting there as a Cardigan student, just like the ninth graders here today listening to somebody talk. I didn't know anything about international relations or China or anything that I didn't learn at Cardigan. I knew I liked Mexican candy, Korean ramen, but that was about it. I probably couldn't have told the difference between a Korean and Japanese person. 7 years after that, I graduated from college and I got this idea that I wanted to go live in China for a year. So I came into this China experience with a total zero. Donut, nothing. Never studied Chinese, wasn't really even that interested in China. I'm not like a manga guy, I'm not into Kung Fu. I just got this idea in my head and I was gonna go. So this is me on the plane, 7 years out of Cardigan with really pretty much a blank slate. Headed over to China with some money in case nobody picked me up at the airport to come home. So what was it like? 10 years over there, the first year, what's it like living in China as a foreigner? So the first thing is that I'm very visible in China. Most people in China don't look like me at all. And so when I go around China, people stare. I'm a public figure, like it or no. People are staring at me and I'm a subject of interest. And there's nowhere to hide. There's no chance that I'm a local Chinese, that maybe somebody ended up with blue eyes or something like that, 6'1". It's just obvious to everybody that you need help. You don't know what you're doing. You can't really do anything on your own. So as an independent person, it's a big struggle because if you want to get water ordered to your apartment, you need somebody to help you out with that. If you want to charge I'm going to date myself. If you want to charge your cell phone, somebody needs to make that call for you. You're sort of helpless. The world for me was very small at first because I couldn't get around. I didn't really even know where to go, but I could go to the market, I could go to the school I was teaching at. I knew like one bus that I could take, and a couple of restaurants where people could speak English or stores where people could speak English. And I didn't have any friends. I didn't go there with a friend. I didn't know anybody there, and so I was very lonely. I read a lot those first couple of months there. It's hard making friends with Chinese people at first. I think a lot of this has to do with context and small talk. We can't share stories about the shows that we watched growing up together. We can't talk baseball. Even I don't know, the little things. It's just not easy to hold a small conversation. It's really loud in China. So my impression of the Asian students at Cardigan was very quiet, very reserved, very focused. And upon arriving in China, I had students and people in the street who were very loud, almost like I feel like everyone's fighting somehow. Horns blaring all the time. The smells are kind of overwhelming there. A lot of it has to do with food, but not always. Like there's this smell in the supermarket. It smells like dried fish in every supermarket. Why does the supermarket smell like that? There's like some great smells too. There's hot pot restaurants, burning soy sauce, noodle shops. There's these great odors, but also you want to try everything and then you end up getting sick a lot. The other big thing is you find out after a certain point, or it just starts to sink in on you that you're illiterate. You can't read anything. You're like a grown-up baby walking around. And it's not like illiterate in Western Europe where a couple of words will sort of jump out at you, or you can at least place an A or a Y. I mean, it's nothing. all of a sudden you're like, wow, this is what it's like to not be able to read at all. And all of this stuff is exhausting. So the first couple of months, every once in a while it just hits you. The smell is overwhelming and nauseating. Nobody's understanding what you're talking about. And it can be an exhausting experience. And then, just like this, it can be exhilarating. So everything is different. And for a lot of people, that's an interesting thing. Like little things. I'm thinking last night, why are men carrying purses around? What is that? Why is that? Why isn't that a thing in America? Why is everyone backing into parking spaces? We all go straight into our parking space. Why is everyone back in? Make such a big deal out of it. What are they building over there? I wonder what's going on around that corner. The pace of play is a lot faster there. Things are going up and being torn down very quickly. Another exhilarating thing is really easy to make friends with other foreigners while you're in China as a foreigner. This is one of the great things about living abroad. It's people that you would never make friends with, never be able to connect with. All of a sudden, you could have this shared experience and you're like brothers. And it really reminded me of living in a dormitory where you have people coming from all different places and sharing this one experience. My best friends from high school, we don't share anything in common, but we're like family. I was like that. Travel is unbelievable. China's a huge place, about the size of America. It's just as geographically diverse as America. There's great access. It's extremely affordable to get places. So I had the opportunity to see deserts, see mountains, see plains, and interact with a number of people who just showed me the greatest amount of interest in hospitality. People inviting me into their homes. I would stay at a hotel and I would eat dinner with the people owning the hotel. They just invite me in, a total stranger. I remember one time I went to a restaurant and I was in the helpless stage. I couldn't order anything. I was just sort of like, and there was nobody else eating for me to point at, like I want that one. And the restaurant owner took me into the back so I could point at which meat and which vegetables and spices I wanted and I didn't want. And then over time, the language starts to work. And for me, this is one of the most magical things about China is the language, which I didn't come to China to learn Chinese, but that's really what kept me there. And I remember, one of my big coups, like one of my big successes later on, when I was making a call to inquire about an apartment. I was moving. And so I asked the guy, how much is this apartment and where is it and where are we going to meet up to view it? And the guy showed up, he called me on the phone and he's like, where are you? Where are you? I'm like, I'm standing right here. And the guy, so finally he realized, he's like looking at me and he's like, oh, I thought you were Chinese. And I was like, oh, thank you. I like you. All right. Over time, China just sort of ceased to be interesting. I lived there for 10 years. It became home. I mean, I had a job, I had a car, I got married, I had a child there. But I was definitely always a foreigner. I can't change the way I look, and there's no white Chinese people. It's just not. It's not America. It's very different. So what is China like for foreigners? What's it like to live in China as a foreigner? I think a lot of you guys, you've had some kind of experience like this. You're not like me. I think a lot of you have already been to China. You've been to many different places, and this is a half international population. So I don't want to draw any lines under that, but what I'd like to say with my last 15 or 20 seconds is that I could tell a million stories, and I think a lot of the people in this room, not just teachers but students, have a lot of interesting stories to tell. But you have to ask. I get 2 minutes to talk. I probably talk for 7 minutes. You have to ask, and we are waiting for you to ask. I sit at the table for lunch or dinner, hoping somebody's going to ask me an interesting question. It could be simple. Mr. Burnett, what do you do? Like, what do you do here? I know you're all thinking it. Like, what do you do? Now, thank you for asking that question. Thank you for asking an interesting question that seems obvious, but it's actually difficult. How did you meet your wife? Something like that. I really encourage you to take that step. If you're thinking that question, ask that question. There's an amazing amount of resources here, and I hope you take advantage of them. So thank you.